The story of the lost city of Atlantis remains one of the most enduring and captivating legends of all time. This story of an ancient civilization trapped underwater has been retold in countless books, movies, and TV shows. But did an advanced ancient civilization really exist, only to vanish without a trace? Despite the enduring popularity of this myth, there has been little concrete evidence to support the existence of Atlantis. However, British author and researcher Graham Hancock believes he's found the truth. Graham claims to have discovered convincing evidence that Atlantis was real and was destroyed 11,000 years ago. As things stand, Graham's radical theory may rewrite history as we know it. So join us as we explore the story of Atlantis, Hancock's discovery, and dive into the deep past, uncovering revelations that will transform how we see our origins. And let's start from where most people believe Atlantis began, with a Greek philosopher named Plato. Plato was one of the most famous ancient Greek philosophers, and a student of both Socrates and Aristotle. He was a child of Athens' golden age, born to wealth and privilege in 428 BC. After training under these brilliant teachers and philosophers, Plato himself would go on to become one of the most celebrated philosophers in mankind's history. Plato's dialogues often explored politics, love, justice, truth, and the human condition, with dazzling depth and insight. But despite all his work on these topics, none of them appear to be as popular as his description of a particular mythical island, the lost city of Atlantis. This lost city was described by Plato in his works Timaeus and Critias. And according to the Greek philosopher, Atlantis was a legend like no other, a dazzling utopia that conquered the seas and shaped the hopes and fears of future generations. Plato believed Atlantis was a powerful and advanced civilization that existed over 11,000 years ago. He also described Atlantis as a vast island located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which was the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis was said to be even larger than Asia and Libya combined, and it was ruled by a series of kings who were descended from the god Poseidon. He describes the city as having a circular shape, with a central island surrounded by concentric rings of water and land. The people of Atlantis were said to be highly skilled in various sciences and arts, but eventually became corrupt and were punished by the gods with a flood that destroyed the city. Plato's account of Atlantis describes how the civilization became increasingly materialistic and selfish. And as punishment for these behaviors, the gods caused a catastrophic flood that destroyed Atlantis. The civilization and all its inhabitants were then swallowed up by the sea. Over time, Plato's story of Atlantis has been interpreted and retold in many different ways. While some have argued that the story has merely a metaphorical tale meant to illustrate the dangers of excesses and the importance of humility, others have claimed that it was a real place that was lost to history. As expected, most people believe Atlantis is nothing but a fictional story that Plato heard about, got convinced of, and wrote about. However, there's one man who seems to think he can convince them. The man is none other than the renowned writer and researcher Graham Hancock. Graham claims to have spent decades investigating the possibility that Atlantis was a real place. And in his book, Fingerprints of the Gods, Graham presents a wealth of evidence to support his theory that Atlantis was not just a myth, but a lost civilization that once existed on Earth. Hancock's evidence includes historical data that he believes point to the existence of a highly advanced civilization that was destroyed in a global catastrophe. One of the key pieces of evidence that Hancock presents is the Piri-Reis map, a 16th century map that shows the coastlines of South America and Africa in remarkable detail, as well as the outline of a continent in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that is strikingly similar to Plato's description of Atlantis. Hancock also points to the megalithic ruins found around the world, such as the pyramids of Egypt and the stone circles of Europe, which he believes show evidence of a shared global culture that was capable of building monumental structures with advanced engineering techniques. He argues that these structures were built by a civilization that was destroyed in a cataclysmic event, possibly a global flood, which wiped out most of their knowledge and technology. What sets Hancock's interpretation apart from previous attempts at proving the existence of Atlantis is his emphasis on the role of ancient myths and legends in preserving the memory of the lost civilization. He argues that myths and legends from around the world, such as the flood myths found in many cultures, contain elements that are consistent with Plato's account of Atlantis. He believes that these stories are not just fanciful tales, but are based on real historical events that have passed down through generations. To support his theory, Hancock also draws on the latest findings in fields such as geology and archaeology, which suggests that there have been multiple global catastrophes in Earth's history that could have wiped out ancient civilizations. He argues that these catastrophes were caused by cometary impacts, solar flares, or other natural events that are beyond human control. In another book, America Before: The Key to Earth's Lost Civilization, Hancock also presents a compelling argument for the existence of Atlantis. He argues that Plato's account was based on real events and that the city was located in what is now the Caribbean. Hancock's evidence also includes the discovery of a massive underwater structure off the coast of Cuba, which he believes was built by a technologically advanced civilization that was destroyed by a comet impact around 12,000 years ago. Here, Hancock argues that the structure off the coast of Cuba, which he calls the Sunken City, was part of a larger network of structures that spanned the entire Caribbean region. He also points to similarities between the architecture of the Sunken City and other ancient structures in the Americas, such as the pyramids of Mexico and Central America. One of the most compelling explanations for the destruction of Atlantis is the comet hypothesis, which suggests that a giant comet crashing into Earth caused the catastrophic floods that wiped out the ancient civilization. This comet hypothesis fits with Hancock's evidence because it suggests that a single catastrophic event could have wiped out Atlantis and led to the loss of much of their knowledge and technology. The theory also helps to explain the many global myths and legends that describe a great flood or deluge, which could have been caused by the impact of a giant comet. One of the key pieces of evidence for the comet hypothesis is the discovery of a layer of sediment that dates back to the time of the alleged flood and contains a high concentration of platinum and other elements that are typically found in comets. This layer has been found in multiple locations around the world, including North America, Europe, and Greenland, suggesting that a global catastrophe occurred around the same time. In addition to the sediment layer, researchers have also found evidence of impact craters that could have been caused by the comet, as well as evidence of massive flooding and climate change that occurred around the same time. If a giant comet did crash into Earth and cause a global catastrophe, it would have had a profound impact on human history and could help to explain many of the enigmas of the ancient world. Graham Hancock's discovery of evidence supporting the possibility of Atlantis has significant implications for our understanding of ancient civilizations and their place in human history. His discovery highlights the importance of preserving our knowledge and technology, because if a global catastrophe really wiped out an advanced civilization such as Atlantis before, then what are the chances that it would not happen again? Additionally, when we look back at throughout history, you realize that natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions have played a significant role in shaping the course of human history, from the destruction of Pompeii to the eruption of Mount St. Helens. By studying the impact of natural disasters on ancient civilizations such as Atlantis, we could gain valuable insights into how these events can shape the course of human history, and how we can better prepare for the future. If Atlantis were a real place, then it would challenge our current understanding of the history of human civilization and force us to reconsider what many once thought a myth. If myths and legends such as the story of Atlantis are based on real historical events, then it could change our understanding of what constitutes a historical fact and what is merely a myth. It could also highlight the importance of preserving and studying myths and legends as means of preserving the memory of past civilizations and the lessons they have to teach us. However, Graham Hancock's theory that Atlantis was a real place has faced criticism and skepticism from many scholars and experts in the field. While his evidence is compelling, some argue that it's not enough to prove the existence of a lost civilization such as Atlantis. Others have criticized his methodology and accused him of cherry-picking data to support his theory. One of the main criticisms is that his theories rely too heavily on speculation and interpretation rather than hard evidence. While some of the pieces of evidence he presents are intriguing, such as the Piri-Reis map, others are more shaky, such as his interpretation of ancient myths and legends as historical accounts. Skeptics argue that this type of evidence is too subjective and can be easily misinterpreted. Another criticism is that his theories are just not consistent with what we know about the history of human civilization. While there is evidence of advanced civilizations that existed thousands of years ago, such as the ancient Egyptians and the Maya, there is no conclusive evidence of a civilization as advanced as the one described by Plato. Skeptics argue that the idea of a lost civilization like Atlantis is more a myth than reality, and with good reason too. The fact is that the evidence of Graham presents can be explained in other ways. For example, the Piri-Reis map could be a forgery or a mistake, while the megalithic ruins around the world could be the result of cultural diffusion rather than a shared global culture. Skeptics also argue that the sediments and impact craters that Hancock cites as evidence of a comet impact could have other explanations, such as volcanic eruptions or climate change. Despite these criticisms, Hancock's theory remains popular among some scholars and the general public. There's also a broader debate about the role of alternative theories in the field of history and archaeology. Some argue that it's important to challenge traditional views and explore new possibilities, while others are more cautious and prefer to stick to established theories until there is more concrete evidence to support alternative interpretations. It is true that we may never know if the lost city truly existed, but there is no doubt that the myth of Atlantis has had a significant cultural impact, inspiring countless works of literature, art, and popular culture. From Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth to the Marvel Comics character Namor, the Submariner, the myth of Atlantis has been a source of inspiration for writers and artists for quite some time. But what is it about the myth of Atlantis that continues to fascinate us? Perhaps it's the idea of a lost civilization that was more advanced than our own, or perhaps the mystery surrounding its disappearance. Or maybe it's the utopian vision of a society that was free from the problems and conflicts of our own world. The idea that such a civilization could have been destroyed in a single day or night by a catastrophic event is both tragic and awe-inspiring, and it speaks to our fear of the unpredictability of nature and the fragility of human existence. So, what does the future hold for Atlantis? Despite the controversy surrounding Hancock's theory, there is ongoing research and exploration into the possibility of Atlantis. New technologies and methods are being developed to uncover the truth about this ancient civilization, and there's a growing interest in the field of alternative archaeology and history. While the search for Atlantis has been ongoing for centuries, new technologies and methods are now being employed to investigate the possibility of a lost civilization more thoroughly than ever before. One area of research that has seen significant advances in recent years is underwater archaeology. With the development of advanced sonar and underwater mapping technology, researchers can now explore the ocean floor with greater precision and detail. This has led to renewed interest in the possibility that Atlantis could be located beneath the waves, as described by Plato. However, the vastness of the ocean and the difficulty of exploring its depths means that this search is still in its early stages. Another area of research that is gaining momentum is genetic analysis. By analyzing the DNA of ancient populations, researchers can gain insights into the origins and movements of ancient civilizations, including the possibility of a lost civilization like Atlantis. The role of new technologies and methods in uncovering the truth about Atlantis is likely to be significant in years to come. With advances in fields such as archaeology, genetics, and geology, researchers will be able to explore the possibility of a lost civilization with greater accuracy and detail than ever before. But it is important to understand that the search for Atlantis may never yield conclusive evidence. Whether or not Atlantis was a real place, Hancock's work has raised important questions that we can't help but hope science gives us answers to, and soon. But what do you think? Do you agree with Graham or his critics? Share your thoughts below.